Hi, this is Simon Obstall and welcome to another tutorial for Apple Motion. And today we're going to be taking a look at an effect that utilizes Motion's most mysterious and intriguing generator. So let's take a look. Okay, so I'm in a new project here, 1920 1080, 25 frames a second, and a duration of 30 seconds. So the first thing I want to do is to bring in a generator's membrane. Now, membrane is always a little bit tricky to set up because the default numbers are just like all over the place. So the first thing I'm going to do is set that speed down to 0.01. And then I'm going to go through and enter some very specific numbers. So start one is going to be 0. The next value down is going to be negative 1.5. And then we're going to have 0.5. And we're going to have 0, 0, and 0. And for this one, we're going to have 0.25. And for this last one, we're going to have negative 1. So the other thing we're going to do is we're going to increase the width and height. So I'm going to go with 2160 by 2160. And then I'm going to come to properties and I'm going to reduce the scale down to 50%. So by increasing the width and height, we've got greater resolution. And that's important because it's a little bit rough and ready unless you do that. So I'm also going to add some filters. I'll add a basic Gaussian blur, maybe set this amount up to 12 just to take care of a little bit more of that aliasing. Then I'll add filters, stylize, add noise, turn off auto animate, turn the amount up to 1, select film grain, and dial the mix value down to about 60%. This is going to give us some really nice texture in there. And then let's add a color and threshold. And let's just adjust this smoothness till we are starting to see a bit more of something. Let's maybe go for that sort of 0.8 or something like that. So then I want to add a little bit more to this group. So I'm going to add in a cellular. Come to the inspector, set the size down to 3, which is the smallest it will go. And let's open up the gradient and bring this black in like this. So we're just getting a few little specks. Let's come to the blend mode and set that to linear dodge. I also need to add in a color solid at the back, make this black. If you don't do this, the membrane, when we move on, can be a bit unstable. I don't really know why, but it's much happier in a group with a color solid behind. And finally, I just want to add some rotation to this cellular. So let's add parameter behavior ramp to that. And let's set that end value to something like 90, just so they're going to drift around like that, looking much more like sort of sparkling particles. Finally, let's set this group to fixed resolution. We can close it down and we can make a clone of it. And let's turn off the original group and let's make from the clone object replicate. Now what we're going to do is use line for the shape. And we are going to need to turn on additive blend because obviously we've got a source that's got no transparency because we put that black solid behind it. So now they're all being added together. Let us just try something like negative 810 for the start and maybe positive 810 for the end. And let's just increase the number of points. Originally, I think I used 9. Let's stick with 9. We might come back and revisit that. So then I'm going to take this group and going to come to filters and distortion and sphere, obviously, because we want this circular effect. And I'm going to set the radius to 500. So this is what we're currently looking like. Those little particles in there are really quite effective, I think. And we're not having to have an expensive particle system to create them. And I think actually they're probably more interesting than particles because they've got this life of their own rather than just being blobs of something. So anyway, enough about that. Let us come back to the replicator and let's come to the color mode and select over pattern. And let's open up the gradient Let's just pick some colors for this, something like this for this end, and this other end, let's go in the opposite direction like this. What we can also do is turn on shuffle order, then that mixes up the way those colors are distributed across the pattern. So then let's also add some rotation to this replicator. So let's add parameter behavior ramp to this, and let's set an end value of, I don't know, 45. Just so we're getting a gentle sort of roll around like this. And we were talking about the number of points on that replicator. Now we've got this set up, let's have another look at that. Let's maybe go for 7 after all. I don't know. I'm in two minds about that, whether I like that or not. Probably 9 was nicer because we had more complexity in that. Oh, no, 10's good. That's what I want. It's they're kind of joining up side by side. I think that's good. So then let's come back to our group and let's add a glow and neon. Let's set the mix value down to something like 25%. Let's set the inner glow 200%. I think you can go on that. Yes. And this edge intensity, let's go up to 100%. Actually, can we go further? 200%. Yes, we can. Actually, really pushing that works really well, I think, because it gives us this feeling that there's kind of light inside there. Actually, will that go even further? Let's go crazy, 500. Yeah, actually, that's pretty good as well. So that really does help a lot, I think. So I don't like the way that these cellular particles are getting too close to the edge. I think that's going to cause us a problem. So I'm going to select these cellular and I'm going to use a circular mask, Shift and Option to draw out the mask like that. And then let's set its radius to something like, I don't know, 360 and maybe feather it in a little bit like this. Maybe even 250, something like that. It'll keep those particles away from the edge. So the other thing I want to do is I want to apply a little bit of softening to the circumference of the circle. And I can do that by creating a new group here and taking the circle tool and again drawing out a circle like that that's going to be roughly the same size as my sphere. Let us center it up, obviously. Let's come to the shape. Let's set its radius to 500. So we don't want this to have a black fill. We want it to have a white outline. And let's go for a width of 12. And we can turn that off because we don't actually need that. So we can come to this group here and add filters, blur, and compound blur. And then we can use that circle as the source for the blur. So let's set that to something like, I don't know, 16. I don't want too much of this, but it's just going to take care of those edges, stop them ringing a bit. So you can see the difference that's made if I zoom in like that. So compound blur, very useful because you can just blur very specific areas of your image. I think the other thing I probably want to do is I want to turn this group to fixed resolution, and that's going to be a little bit neater and more stable. I think I might also add a little bit of color correction at this point. So color curves, and let's just bump up the brightness like that. And maybe switch to the blue and just give it a little bit more blue overall, maybe a little bit more green overall. Anyway, you can adjust that to taste. So the other thing I want to do is I want to create some shading. So I'm going to take this circle that we've made and I'm going to right click, duplicate, and I'm going to turn it on. So we don't want outline, we do want fill, but we're not going to use color for the fill mode. We're going to use gradient. We are going to use grayscale from this menu here. Let's set the left-hand tag to be completely white. And let's change the type to radial. And let's set the Y start to 540 and the Y end to -540. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come to properties, blend mode, and set it to multiply. And we've created this very dramatic eclipse type effect. We can obviously adjust the amount of this, so we can maybe go down to 65%. So we're getting a little bit less darkening, but still quite dramatic. And what we could also do is come back to the gradient and take this value here, the middle value, and just slide that down a bit. Maybe set that to 75%. And finally, let's just come into the neon filter and give it some more outer glow, I think. So increase that amount and increase the outer glow brightness as well. So we're getting this sort of halo like that. And what we should probably do, because this is always good practice, let's take that color solid And let's Alt drag that out to create a new group and put that new group behind everything else. Always a good idea to composite against black, and you see the difference that makes. It's actually made quite a bit of difference to those edges, and we might just come back into our circle here that is creating that shading and just reduce that feather. So if we feather it in sort of -100, that's probably quite good. So anyway, I hope that's given you enough ideas to play around with. Thanks very much indeed for watching. I'll see you again soon.